Have you ever thought about who the worst Death Eater really was? What if it wasn't the most sadistic or ruthless, but the most spineless? In today's video, you'll find out why Lucius Malfoy might be the most disgraceful servant of Voldemort. At first glance, Lucius Malfoy is the perfect aristocrat. Polished manners, expensive robes, an air of superiority. He's powerful, wealthy, and undeniably skilled in magic. Yet behind this flawless exterior lurks a man driven by fear, cowardice, and selfish ambition. Unlike Bellatrix Lestrange, who embraced Voldemort's ideology with fanatical devotion, Lucius never had the courage to fully commit. He talked big, played the part, but when real danger loomed, he scrambled to save himself. Time and time again, he proved that his true allegiance was not to the Dark Lord, but to his own survival. How did he become this way? What happened to him after Voldemort's downfall? Let's take a closer look at Lucius Malfoy's path, from privilege to disgrace. Born into one of the wealthiest pure-blood families, Lucius grew up believing in his own superiority. His father, Abraxas Malfoy, was rumored to have been involved in political conspiracies, setting the stage for Lucius's obsession with power. At Hogwarts, he was an excellent student, a model Slytherin, and even became a prefect. But despite the popular assumption, he was never particularly close to Severus Snape. Snape was 6 years younger, and Lucius had little reason to associate with him. After school, Lucius eagerly joined Voldemort's ranks, drawn to the Dark Lord's power. He believed aligning himself with the strongest wizard of the age would secure his place in the magical world. Unlike other Death Eaters who openly reveled in cruelty, Lucius operated in the shadows. He used his wealth and influence to manipulate people rather than fight on the battlefield. Yet when Voldemort fell, Lucius didn't hesitate to switch sides. He claimed he had been under the Imperius Curse, avoiding Azkaban and continuing his life of luxury. He married Narcissa Black, fathered Draco, and focused on expanding his political influence, bribing ministry officials rather than engaging in open warfare. This is where Lucius became even more despicable than the Death Eaters, who at least remained loyal. Bellatrix never wavered. Fenrir Greyback never hid his savagery. But Lucius, he played both sides, never willing to get his hands dirty unless he was sure he could escape the consequences. His obsession with power led him to meddle in Hogwarts affairs, targeting Dumbledore and pushing his own agenda. He secretly slipped Tom Riddle's diary to Ginny Weasley, setting off a chain of events that endangered the entire school. His plan failed, and when he was caught, he was disgracefully removed from Hogwarts' Board of Governors. When Voldemort returned, Lucius found himself trapped. He had spent years denying his involvement with the Dark Lord, yet now he had no choice but to serve him again. He was given a critical mission: retrieve the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries. He failed spectacularly. Captured and imprisoned in Azkaban, he lost everything: his wealth, his status, and most importantly, Voldemort's trust. When the Dark Lord freed his captured followers, Lucius returned home a broken man. His once magnificent manor became a Death Eater headquarters, and he was no longer a powerful leader but a disgraced servant. Voldemort humiliated him at every turn, taking his wand, stripping him of his dignity, and treating him like a worthless pawn. By the time of the Battle of Hogwarts, Lucius had no fight left in him. While others stood their ground, he abandoned the battlefield to search for Draco. His only act of defiance was fleeing, ensuring his family's survival while leaving Voldemort's forces to their doom. This final betrayal spared the Malfoys from Azkaban, but it did not redeem Lucius. Unlike Draco, who eventually grew beyond his family's toxic beliefs, Lucius never truly changed. He remained bitter, clinging to outdated ideas, even resenting the way his grandson was being raised with more tolerance. He lost his power, his influence, and worst of all, his relevance. In the end, Lucius Malfoy wasn't the most dangerous Death Eater. He wasn't the cruelest, the strongest, or even the most committed. He was something far worse, a man who spent his entire life chasing power, only to be left with nothing. The fall of Voldemort shattered the world of pure blood supremacy. The Malfoys, once proud aristocrats, stood among the ruins of a dream they had spent generations nurturing. For centuries, they believed in their divine right to rule the wizarding world, looking down on Muggleborns as unworthy. But after the war, everything changed. Draco Malfoy, raised on tales of family honor, saw that honor crumble before his eyes. He had spent his youth sneering at Hermione Granger, but by the final battle, she was a war hero, and he was a frightened boy caught between his past and the brutal reality of Voldemort's reign. He had once laughed at the idea of shaking hands with a Muggleborn. Now he was forced to watch as the world he knew slipped away, and he could do nothing about it. Lucius Malfoy, once a powerful figure in the Ministry, lost everything: his reputation, his influence, even his dignity. His home became Voldemort's prison. His wand was taken from him. The man who once dictated policy now cowered in the shadows, stripped of all authority. After the war, he didn't fight for the old ways. He didn't have the strength. He spent his remaining years in quiet disgrace, a relic of a past that no longer held any power. The Malfoys weren't the only family struggling to survive in this new world. The Knotts, the Averys, and the Selwyns, pure-blood families with deep ties to the Dark Lord, found themselves in a similar position. Some, like the Carrows, refused to let go of their ideals. They went into hiding, clinging to the hope that the wizarding world would one day return to its rightful order. Others chose a different path, blending into the background, pretending they had never believed in Voldemort's cause. But not all pure-bloods were as blinded by tradition. The Weasleys had always rejected the idea of blood purity. Arthur Weasley, ridiculed for his fascination with Muggles, suddenly found himself on the right side of history. His son Ron stood at the heart of the battle that reshaped their world. And while the Malfoys were avoiding Azkaban, the Weasleys were celebrated as heroes. The balance of power had shifted. Even within the Malfoy family, the old ways began to die. Narcissa, despite her upbringing, committed an act that no true believer in blood purity would have dared. She lied to Voldemort's face, declaring Harry Potter dead just to ensure Draco's safety. It was a moment of defiance, not for ideology, but for love. A decision that would save her family in the end. Draco himself changed more than anyone. The boy who once taunted Muggleborns and worshipped his father's ideals learned to let go. By the time his own son, Scorpius, was old enough to attend Hogwarts, Draco had abandoned his family's obsession with purity. Scorpius grew up in a world where blood status no longer mattered, and Draco let it happen. He no longer fought for the superiority of his lineage. He had seen what that fight had cost him. Not all pure-blood families learned this lesson. Some whispered in secret that the war had been lost unfairly, that Voldemort had been betrayed, that one day the world would remember the old ways. They refused to accept Muggleborns as equals, but they were fewer in number now, their voices quieter, their influence fading. The wizarding world had moved on. The world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters, Sirius Black once said. And he was right. Many pure-blood families chose survival over ideology. Some fought for a new world, some tried to reclaim the past. And some, like the Malfoys, simply learned to live with their mistakes. By the time Scorpius Malfoy walked through the doors of Hogwarts, The name Malfoy no longer inspired fear. The pure-blood elite had fallen. Their castles still stood, their wealth remained, but their power was gone. The old ways had crumbled, and in their place a new generation had begun to rise.